Middle Path Radio, your number one online Islamic talk station.
And in the beginning, we just want to say the people, there's a man died tonight, yesterday I think, or today, a Muslim man died as well, and 15 people died, so we just want to show our sympathies with them and with their loss as well. Our topic, just like things we know about, things that are happening, we'll touch on that. And our guest tonight, on my left, close to me actually, from Salvation Army, is a local leader, Captain Nick Coke. And far left, and we have a teacher from Kunming University. His name is a Chalco local leader, Shweta Choudhury. You got a beautiful name. A lot of people will be asking you, what's the meaning of the name? And before we go, can I just give a briefing what I'm going to talk about today? You know, this thing happened in France. A lot of people are worried. A lot of people are thinking, what's going to happen? It's a magazine called Charlie. I don't know if I can't pronounce it. It's a French word, isn't it? Charlie Hebdo, is it? Or Charlie Hebdo. Yeah. See what I mean? My French is not good. And yeah, so I think it's a magazine. I think it's torn around the world now. What the magazine done to it? There were some cartoons. A few years ago, I'm sure you know about. A few years ago, there was a cartoon in another country. It was
Denmark.
Denmark, that's right, yeah. Thanks for helping me. Denmark happened. And after that, I think a lot of people died as well. About 150 people died because of that. And then now, recently, we have a similar line. And I think the magazine started in 1970. It's a left-wing magazine. They're proud to be anti-faith or anti-religion. But the problem is, I find it is, the way the Muslim took you can't say it's a revenge thing. I think it's more clear now. It's a political thing. They're from Al-Qaeda. So it's always Al-Qaeda and the West always have this kind of rivalry. And so they're part of that. Can I just ask Nick, I'm sure you heard of things happening now. Can I just ask you what you know about it and what's your view?
Well, I've heard a lot about it because it's been on the news. Constantly now for a week and a little bit more. I mean, it's a terrible thing, terrible incident. Awful that anybody is killed in the way in which people were killed. And there's been a lot of debate. So initially, obviously, people were offering condolences to those who were killed, but it's been interesting how the debate has quite quickly moved on. To people starting to talk about why and who and what is our response that ordinary people should have, that governments should have, that we in the West should have. Lots of talk about freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. So it seems to me that the newspapers, the media have been absolutely full of people commenting, and part of that I think is because they feel it's an attack on them. Because it was a newspaper and it was some kind of journalism, and this thing about freedom of speech, which is a massive part of France. But I think for non-journalists, for ordinary people that I talk to around here, say in Tower Hamlets in London, that maybe the issue isn't so much about freedom of speech, but there's some fear about what's happened. Could it happen here? Could something like that happen here? There's a fear of these things happening in a bigger way, and we all have a responsibility. And I think that you talk about response. How would I respond to it? Well, the response has to be that we have to look for hope beyond anything else. It's pointless us talking negatively, increasing the cycles of negativity, looking for the enemy and pointing fingers all the time and that kind of thing, and drawing lines between different groups of people. We have to look for hope.
But who gets the most benefit out of this? Overnight they become millionaires now, isn't it? 3 to 5 million magazine being circulated. And it's not the same price. I'm sure it's more than they used to be. Would you like to
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that it's nothing to do with business, but in terms of, the circulation has increased from something like 60,000 a week to like 1 million or
I think 3 to 5 million.
3 to 5
Yeah,
million
yeah.
in the last thing. So it's an unfortunate success, I guess, but I would rather not see it in those terms. I mean, or who benefits from this. I mean, it certainly looks like it's the Muslim community around the world, or the Islam community around the world, that has a negative effect after this. If there's people who claim to be of the faith who are part of the attacks that went on. But I think, just like what Nick's saying, it's more to do with a solution or hope, or what we can do to get out of this situation, or what we can do in the future.
People are pointing at faith groups, saying this is your problem. But is there a faith problem, or it just doesn't add up to it?
I think it's to do, it is part to do with the politics of free speech, though. It's in terms of, you can say it's this faith group, but we were talking before, and there was supposed to be something about Jesus that was meant to come out from the magazine in Denmark, but that didn't. That was held off. So it was, there's a bit of double standards going on when Muslims are able to express certain things or not, or say we dislike this, and then the issues get amplified. But it's more to do with the media amplification of whoever they're scapegoating as targets for non-expression of free.
But we can't definitely defend those people who kill 15 people. We just can't defend them. The crime they done. There has to be
There's no way.
Things they're done. What is the always? Can I just ask you for that? Because why is it always something happens like that? Why do we end up killing people? Is there no other way of doing it? Is there any practice of Prophet's time? Like if there were things happening like that, they killed and stuff like that. Why do you have to kill somebody? Why can't we talk in the table?
I don't think it's we. It's not. There are lone cells, like what we saw in Sydney. It was a lone cell. These can be people that are part of other things, not faith, but actually mental health conditions. Like there's something seriously wrong with the person that believes the way in which you have to tackle an issue that you see or an injustice is by killing somebody else. The reason why things like politics were invented is so people can discuss and come to some sort of middle path to work out what to do. I think what it does do is show that there are fanatics and extremists that try and marry up things like faith and an injustice they see, and I think the only way of doing it is by killing someone. But yeah, we have to condemn this, because there's no way that this can be justified by any faith person, whether they're of faith or not. Actually,
I think as soon as it happened, especially the big organizations, straight away they come out and they condemn everything that happened. It's not in our name, don't do it in our name. People who done it, the criminals. They also killed them. The policeman, there was Muslim, wasn't he? He died as well. And still people pointing a finger at us and saying Muslims should be saying more.
Yeah.
Individually saying sorry and stuff like that. Why do you have to say sorry for somebody's crime? Somebody else has done it. And why do I have to say repeat and repeat again? Think like you guys, you working with the faith group. Do you face, what do you see? Because people are frightening. There's a man died. There's in Birmingham. There was some shops were not burned. I don't know. There's something happened there as well. There was some threatening happening as well. Happening. There are some churches that also burned, or probably something in Niger, right?
Yeah.
And so it's quite boiling over and over again. So what do you see?
I mean, I think Nick can probably come into this one in terms of what you might see from a non-Muslim perspective. That might be more interesting. But I think what it is, there's a lot of fear-mongering going on the media. So, what you were mentioning was something that Rupert Murdoch was saying about how Muslims should be apologizing for the actions of all Muslims around the world, which is ridiculous. Because if a certain Christian did something, we don't expect all of Christianity to apologize as a result. But so there's something that I think that's going on in the media, which is where there's lots of discussions about Muslims or people doing these things without any Muslims being involved, which I find quite bizarre. And then there's something going on the local streets of Tower Hamlets where and Nick can probably talk about. I don't think people are as worried that this is necessarily what's going to happen, that all your Muslim brothers and sisters are going to suddenly turn on you. That's probably not what the case is. It might be really interesting to hear.
Okay, we have a text from someone. So if you don't mind, Nick, if you could read it. It's too small for me. I don't have my glasses.
It says, isn't the freedom of speech argument just a straw man for two reasons? Number one, Muslims aren't against criticising religion, the Prophet, or freedom of speech. And secondly, rappers, comedians, cartoonists have either been sacked, fined or arrested for speaking freely. So there isn't a fair standard being applied to Muslims.
Do you understand what you said? Or?
Yeah, I mean it's this polarisation, I think, is what they're referring to, this idea that somehow all Muslims are against freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And I don't think it is. This whole incident is being made into Muslims versus freedom of speech, and supposedly everybody who's a non-Muslim is supposed to be for freedom of speech, and we all understand exactly what that means, and all Muslims are against it. I think that's the problem with this whole discussion, is that it's far more nuanced than that.
But do you feel it should be a limitation regarding freedom of speech? It has to be one.
This is what I would say, is that if you're going to ask a group of, say, non-Muslim Westerners, what do they understand as freedom of speech? I think you'd find an incredible variety of opinions about that. And there'll be some people, and I would put myself into this category, which will, I think, freedom of speech, yeah, but up to, there's a limit. There's a limit of how you, of respect.
Yeah.
And what I would expect, what are the boundaries of freedom of speech? Can you just say anything?
But do you feel we are naive? Myself, I'm talking about Muslims. Do you think we're naive? The magazine we're talking about, they've been sued 13 times by Catholic faith. 13 times, because he was abusing the Prophet, the Jesus. He was abusing their line of belief. If you can abuse their own faith, what do you expect from these guys to talk about another faith? Is it now, are we thinking, he should be respecting my one, not their one? That's how they are.
Yeah. If we contextualize it within 2006, where President Jacques Chirac was actually even saying we shouldn't do anything to inflame people's passions. So, there was even an understanding under that president of France that I think that there's a distinction between the freedom of speech and the right to offend, and I think we heard Nick Clegg talking about this, but the right to offend is something completely different. To go out to offend people is very different to freedom of speech. I think as Muslims, many are okay for the freedom of speech because we have.
But to be fair on them, do you think Muslim faith group overprotective or over defensive? What can you let people talk? Do you think we're overdoing it?
I think again,
number one, killing is number one. That's overdoing it. Okay, and if you say, what we're saying is, look, we love our Prophet more than ourselves. We're only asking you guys, listen, you can draw my picture however you want it.
Yeah.
If you want to do the naked one, no problem. But don't do that. Don't do that with our Prophet, because we don't practice that.
Yeah.
We don't even compare. We're asking you, look, just to be fair, please just apart from him and his family, do something else. We don't mind whatever you do.
But that's exactly why they're going to do it. But
isn't that provoking people? Yeah, people are dying because of that.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about is when it becomes offensive. By doing that, it will offend you. By drawing your picture, like you said, it wouldn't. And that's where a sort of a reaction can be made. I
was amazed when I went to Google just to find out. But I'm going to talk about these guys. When I was amazed when they talked about God himself, they picturized the old man, and they put, this, as a Muslim, we're supposed to protect Jesus. This is our faith. His honor, his dignity. They said, I can call that child of sin. That is so disgusting. That is so disgusting. Why didn't we, Muslims, say anything then? Why not? Isn't he our prophet? So I'm not trying to say bad. I'm talking about no. It was our job. If you can say something like that to him, it was our job to say, just change it, do something else. You've got more other things to do. You don't have to abuse.
But I think then again we come on to the solution bit. So part of the solution is seeing, okay, if our brothers and sisters of faith or non-faith are being attacked unfairly, then we go to their assistance, we go to help them. And like our prophets did before us, like many communities have done before, and that's what we should see. So if the Jewish faith is being attacked, we should be there with them,
of course,
you know, shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. But again, it's we can't let, okay, if Jesus is being attacked, now that's a Christian problem because Jesus is their main prophet. We must be there.
Something I thought that was helpful. So if we're talking about how do we react when something that we hold sacred, in your case, you know, we're talking about the prophet. How should we react to these kind of things? I thought, you know, one of the most moving reactions actually I thought I saw over the weekend was on Twitter, people and Facebook and stuff. Everybody was putting up, who is Muhammad? Who does Muhammad mean? What does it mean to you as an individual? And I found that as a non-Muslim person really moving, because instead of it being an angry, I hate Charlie Hebdo for now printing another cover, it was a positive. It wasn't letting them get away with it, actually. It was almost like a defiant kind of resistance, but in a positive way, saying, look, who is Muhammad? Well, he's this, and all these really beautiful statements of what he means to 1 point however many billion Muslims are around the world, and so many people were saying it, and I found that as a non-Muslim person quite moving. So I think that's one of the ways we can respond. It's all about our response, isn't it? And we do have responsibility as people of faith to think about how do we respond when we are provoked. We can't just use it as an excuse to do stuff. We have to be careful that we don't allow people to do stuff that they shouldn't do. So we do have a responsibility to teach others and work together across faith, across non-faith, you know, whoever, people of goodwill together, common good, working for one another, because we believe, as communities, the world is a much stronger place together than it is when we tear ourselves apart and try and cause separations. And we know there's so many people trying to do that in our society. We have to resist that and find ways to resist it.
I think you guys do a fantastic job. Like, I think under you have 300 members. You're working with the mosque, the centres, schools, churches. So what do you guys do?
What do we do?
What was your highest? And what was your...
What was like our highlights? Okay, so the organisation I work for is Citizens UK. We're a national community organising body. So community organising, see it like as an ancient practice of where you get lots of people together around the word that Nick used, which is the common good. Yeah, we've got all differences. We see Jesus in different ways, that's fine. But what are the similarities we see in our faiths, in our beliefs, in society, things that we want to change together? And that's the common good. So we've got lots of churches, mosques. You know, when people talk about, why don't people work together? This is basically what we do. And we train people as leaders in civil society. So it's not me speaking on people's behalf. It's not advocates. It's actually people like Nick, people like yourself, part of member.
So what do you train? Do you train them faith, or what do you do?
We don't train in faith, but we're not doing the martial arts. No, most definitely. That's another form of change, I guess. But no, we teach people about leadership. We teach people about a pragmatic form of leadership. We teach people to win and negotiate in life in order to go from the world as it is to the world as it should be. And
I can't see Nick punching anyone.
I can't see Nick punching anyone either, but most definitely not. You know, that would be quite a story. So we train people in leadership. We teach them about skills, about things about building relationships, being in relationship with people within your own community and outside of your community to sort of widen your network. Find things that are in common that you want to work with, and so it's that thing about you build hope, you build trust, you build relationships, and you bring about change. And so we've got a leaflet here, a little magazine here, not magazine, what is this called? A pamphlet. So and it's got something called, it says Small Change, Big Difference, and it's referring to the Living Wage campaign. That's probably one of the best known campaigns London Citizens is known for, which challenges the idea of how much people should be paid.
I think a few years ago you brought the I think just before the election, wasn't it? Just 3 days before election. That was amazing. How did that happen? Can you
Nick, you want to go for that?
I'll say a bit, because where we're doing the radio from today, the room we're sitting in is in the offices of London Citizens, and it was actually around this table that it all started, because David Cameron came to this office just before he was Prime Minister, and we were, as an organisation, wanted to get the three party leaders together for not a debate, but to come to our agenda. We had an agenda representing our communities, the common good, we wanted to present to them. We wanted them to make commitments to us about if they got elected, what they were going to do. But we needed David Cameron to turn up, because we knew if he came, the others would come, because they kind of said they might come, but he was the one who was saying, well, I'm not sure. So he came, he did a visit, he sat right over here where there were a couple, you won't be able to see us because we're on a radio, but there were a couple of people sitting here, right where David Cameron was sitting, and actually Rahana, who was who did the job before, predecessor to Sotez, the organiser, sort of looked him in the eye and said, you know, will you come? Will you come to our assembly? You say you can, this thing called the Big Society, because that was his big thing at the time, just before the last election, if you remember. If you really care, you should come, because we will have the Big Society will be there in that room. We'll have a few thousand people.
Does it sound Cockney when he speaks?
I don't think it sounded very
Tonian.
It sounded a bit posh, actually, a lot posher, even than I probably sound. So he agreed. Anyway, he didn't agree there and then, but a couple of days later, he did agree to come. And when he said yes, the other leaders, so we had Gordon Brown, we had Nick Clegg, and they all came together in Westminster Central Hall. And it was the only time the three leaders got together in the same event, except for the TV debate. So this was for London Citizens UK. That's a massive thing that we managed to pull that off.
Yeah, and for civil society to know that they can hold the three leaders of the three main parties accountable. And I think the key thing to mention there is there was a negotiation in place. What doesn't happen in TV debates is you and me, we might be able to ask a question, but we can't ask them for things. And here is an opportunity for us to say, this is what civil society, people from different backgrounds...
We're just getting a lot of taxis and stuff like that. There's another one here. Nick, go ahead. Help me with my glasses.
Okay.
He talks about Pope, yeah?
It says here that the Pope, this is from Sister Asma. The Pope suggested that if you provoke, then expect a reaction, in reference to the cartoons. The original founder and editor of Charlie Hebdo said that the current editors dragged his teams to their deaths. If one insists on absolute freedom, then we know that there is a double standard here. Aren't world leaders supposed to encourage more respect, understanding and tolerance, instead of promoting cartoons that set all communities on fire? Well, I mean, I think that's a good point.
I think that's a very positive attitude, especially from the faith group coming together, especially in the crisis of like that, something happening. Even Nick, yourself, you've been on the last Friday. You've been to the meeting for London Faith Group. You're part of that team, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm part of something called Faith Forum for London, and we meet regularly. But yeah, we had a statement that we put out about this, and it's made up of the major faiths in London, 8 or 9 different faiths.
So how do you see when Pope coming out and giving this very positive comments he made? How do you see that? Do you see that as I see it as a very positive?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the Pope said is quite interesting, because he's actually attracted some negativity from the Prime Minister, amongst others, who felt that what the Pope said he didn't agree with. So it's quite interesting. But I think it's right that religious leaders like the Pope and others are willing to give their voice to this. I think it's really important that it's not just Muslim leaders that are expected to sort of stand up and say stuff on their own. It's absolutely right that Christian leaders, all people of faith and non-faith, are willing to say something that isn't just this constant line about freedom of speech. You can say what you like, because I think, as that text said, I think it's right that there are limits.
We're just going to go for a break in 2 minutes, a minute now. Just want to thank the brothers and sisters who are watching, and thanks for your texts. Please get them coming in, and when we ask the panel to answer them, we're just going to go for a break and see you in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
We coin names when we're Muslims to sound out a wider meaning for it.
Okay.
But that's basically what it is, yeah.
Okay, let's go back to Nick. Nick, there is a idea, or people think, I work with a lot of old people as well, idea, or people usually when the jobs are lost, on the economy goes down, people start blaming immigrants and other people. And you guys have been working with them for a long time. They're probably thinking, some people, not all people, some people, this is the country I love. It's beautiful. There are a lot of beautiful people around. Yeah. They look beautiful. They have lovely houses. Well, like Nick, he's been working with the Muslim community for a long time.
Yeah.
And I always say he's one of my best friends. And it's no surprising. I'm sure he said I'm his best friend too.
I do, honestly.
Okay. You know, when we say people are taking everything from this country, Muslims are coming and taking everything away. I say some people would do it. And some people will say that you can't stop them. But is there any truth in it? Because I was just going to a website and saying, is that the true thing? Is that really happens? Because when I went to the thing immediately, MCR or MCB, I looked into it. And just to summarize what it says, they say Muslims, what was the question? I forgot. They have business in this country, but 31 billion plus. Yeah. So this is good for the country. 31 billion plus investment from Muslim countries in this country. Yeah. In London, they have 13,500 businesses alone in London. They created 70,000, maybe more, jobs. And when you say, are we taking something back, most hardly happens in the Bengali community. What we do is, like I'm working, how much I can save? £20, £30 a week after giving rent, tax and everything. Yeah. If I send back home, probably what, £20 a week? If I do, I don't do that. So, do you think it's a myth, or do you think, like another example, like Qatar, a small island in French, they Canary Wharf, they're part of it. Howard's, they're part of it. Excel, they're part of it. Yeah. Shad, they're part of it. Barclays, they're part of it. Sainsbury, they're part of it. I mean, they have money coming in. It's not all going out. Yeah. Listen, that's a good thing. We live in Britain. We want to see what's good for them. Mm-hmm. We're part of that thing. So do you think that myth is a myth? Definitely. We're not all taking out. It's all coming in as well. So what would you say to those people?
Well, I think a lot of the things that are said along the lines you just described are to do with immigration. So there's a trend in politics right now, and I think it's to do with an election coming up, to talk about immigration and to try and put immigration onto the top issue. And it's driven a lot by UKIP, I think, and I think the other parties are responding by going along with it, but maybe they shouldn't. And of course, I think you're right. It's ridiculous to say that it's all having immigration into this country is causing us all these problems, and isn't it a terrible thing? We should stop people. I think we have to have a proper debate about immigration. I think that's right, but some of the discussion about it is to do with an election coming up and trying to win votes. I think, and also I think when countries at times of economic difficulty, which is what we've just been through and are still in to some extent, people always look for scapegoats and for people who they can blame. And in this case, yet again, as happened before, it's immigration. So that, I think, is why this has been talked about more, maybe right now, than it has done over the last few years. It's not just about Muslim people, actually, it's often about Eastern European people. So it's quite a wide discussion, but it's ultimately about immigration, I think.
Yeah, but no.
But if you take the example of America, almost all of them are
immigrants. From one
and they're the superpower of the world.
Are we not all? I mean, let's be honest. We're all immigrants, right? I mean, when I moved to the East End, people say, "Oh,
I've got a few texts coming in. Okay. Just gonna. Would you like to read that one and see if you can answer that one? The second one.
The second one.
Or first one, whatever. It's your choice.
Okay.
Sorry, brother and sister. We're not going to take all, but we'll take some of them. So go.
Okay. This is back on the freedom of speech. So it's freedom of speech isn't freedom to be Islamophobic. The cartoons were abusive and hate speech. They amount to inciting hatred and even violence, as we have seen with the shootings themselves, but also an already marginalized minority of Muslims are being dehumanized, their beliefs and their way of life. Ultimately, their identity is mocked, and violent seculars are... oh, I've lost it.
Yeah, go back to me. You answered as much as you read.
Let's read the... Yeah, I think I'll have to read the last bit.
What did I do? Okay, go
on. Grenade bombing mosques and killing one man in France and another in Germany. The cartoons incite hatred and violence. And it was from an anonymous person messaging in. I mean, I think it just goes back to what we were discussing before, as well as does it incite hatred? I think some of the reactions to it do. Some of the, like this morning, I don't know if anyone picked up, in Birmingham, near Birmingham University, there's something where it said Islam should die or Islam will die, and Birmingham comes in because there was obviously Emerson, this great expert from the States, who basically said Birmingham is a Muslim city and non-Muslims aren't allowed to enter, and parts of London have Sharia police who beat people up. But I think it brings out really interesting thing. This does incite, it's fear-mongering. It gets people scared. If you've never been to Birmingham and you're in America and you're watching Fox News, you're about to be frightened because they're like, oh, can't go there because in Birmingham.
People in the UK, I think.
Yeah, people in the UK, I think we've seen some of this around we're just talking about immigration. Some of the places where they're the most Eurosceptic or anti-immigrants are the places where it's like 95+%.
But in another sense, in Niger, it was Niger, wasn't it? You could back me up with that. Yeah. There are some worship places been damaged. So what would you say?
Same in France. Same in France. Mosques have been attacked.
Yeah, but I'm saying in both ways. Yeah. It's happening both ways.
Yeah.
So what would you say to them?
Yeah, and then look,
but they need to stop too. If you're complaining they're killing Muslims, they're doing attacking mosques, also Muslims do the same thing. So who do you blame? So we've got to be, say the both side of it, right?
100%.
There are some Muslims nutters. I agree with you. But there are some other guys, they're Muslim, they're also nutters too.
And then they had that organised and they demonstrated what the value of Muslims in the country were, but not just Muslims, people of different backgrounds, and they concentrated on the positive, and that's what they're trying to push through. And I think and there are loads of examples of this. It's not to say this doesn't happen. Nick's a fantastic example of this stuff happening locally, but there's lots of this stuff that happens in this country and others, and these are the things we really need to look on, not adding fuel to the fire on those sorts of things. Would you reckon, Nick?
Absolutely. I think it comes back again always to how do we respond to provocation? How do we respond to these stories? For me, we have to find ways to show hopeful response, peace-loving response, bringing people together, working for the common good. And we all, each one of us, and anyone listening to this today, has a responsibility to take part in that and to tell their family, to tell their friends, to tell all the people that this is the right response. We can't just sort of hold our hands up in despair and say, isn't it a terrible world we live in? Oh, we can't do anything. We can. Each one of us can take responsibility and do something, and that includes the things we say to each other, even behind closed doors. How are we talking about these things to in our families and our households? It starts there. We've got to get our hearts right. And as a Christian, I stand before God, and He knows what I think and what I say, and I have to try and do that in the right way. That's where it all starts.
Yeah. So if I ask you the question now, the problem is quite the same everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, people who want to live in the peace and peacefully. So terrorists are messing around from all sides. I think last week, wasn't it, in Metro came out, the terrorist attack from the faith only 2%. Only 2% from faith groups. So can you imagine 98% is from other faith? No faith, sorry.
Non-faith.
Non-faith. So who talks about them? Nobody does. Yeah. So we're just talking about the faith, only 2% only.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to brush everything into faith.
Yeah.
So how would we say if we want to defeat terrorists, all kind, and for all faith, or non-faith, what should we do?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? That's a big question. I mean, I just really what I just said a moment ago. I mean, we start as individuals, but we live in society and in communities. We have to build relationship. That's the way to do it, with people not like you.
Yeah.
So there's no point me just hanging out with a load of people who think the same way as me, because that isn't going to change the world. I've got to find people who I wouldn't normally hang out with, spend time with them, get to understand them, build relationship, work together. That's how we change the world. In fact, that's the only way the world has ever changed for the better. There is no other way of doing it.
Can you say that in French? Can you speak French?
Mais oui. A little. I did it at school, but yeah. I mean, the thing is, Ishaque, there will be people in France who think the same way I just said, and are doing it right now.
I'm sure.
The trouble is, we're not hearing enough about those people. In fact, the day that thing happened in Paris, you and I were sitting in my house talking about what we were going to do in our community for 2015 to bring people together, weren't we? That's what we were doing. We didn't know this stuff was kicking off in France, but that's what we're doing. And I think for every terrible act that happens in this world, there are actually thousands of really positive acts.
Really amazing acts.
But we just don't celebrate those enough. We don't lift them enough. We don't report them enough in the news. And we've got to talk about it a whole lot more.
Yeah. Would you like to comment that?
Yeah, no, just, like, what the world got to do is do lots of community organising. Yeah. Basically, they got to do this. Like the other day I was in Darul Ummah Mosque, and there I was hearing of a project where the students, the sixth formers, go over to the homes which are mainly elderly white people who are in care homes, and they go off and then they clean the carpets and they tidy things for them and they give them a bit of befriend. That's beautiful. They give them company. And what do you think the experiences of those elderly folk are? That there's people, when there's lots of other people that don't visit them, they've got young lads from the mosque that visit them after school or after prayers or whatever. I think that's beautiful. And there are lots more of these stories we should be sharing and less of the negative.
Probably, I meet a lot of young people too. Young people are always hyped up all the time. So I could look into their eyes and say, if we're thinking like we're going to force them to do something, you can't do that. You can't force nobody to do anything. The more you push them, if you want to be very defensive, and you think you're going to force them to admit to you or stuff, you can't do it. You have to be reasonable, and you have to be fair. That's the only way you can get the good people together. There are a lot of people in the world. They are beautiful people. They want to see a lovely place we live in. And that's the only way. If I'm happy, you can be happy. If I'm not happy, I'm going to always pick on you, isn't it? So if we can get those lovely people together, I think it will change. People will change. You wouldn't see a Pope coming out and saying defense or in a positive manner. You wouldn't see that a few years ago. You wouldn't see that. And so if people are coming into, if people are trying to break the faith groups around, we have differences. Of course we have differences. But we have to keep the differences, but we have to respect each other. In all manner. We have a difference with my Muslim colleague. He have a different belief sometimes. But we go along. Why can't we have a similar line with our neighbours? It can be something else. And we can have the shareness. There's a comment on everyone making it. If you say the absolute freedom of speech, you can say anything and everything. Is that true? I don't believe that. You can't say it. If you say anything against their lovely Jewish people too, can you say against them? You will be in trouble. You will be saying something. Can you say against, I think today, Pope talked about, he said regarding same marriage. Same marriage, he said something, our faith doesn't allow it. Same with us as well. We're not asking people to stop. This is their thing they're doing. And one of the brother, I think he, in the Facebook, he said, he needs to stop now, otherwise he's not going to be allowed in this country if he talks like that. If you talk about same marriage is not good and stuff like that, you won't be allowed in this country. You will stay in his Italy all the time. So he was just like making a fun out of it. But if there are a lot of things we have in common, why can't we share it?
Well, I think we can. We just got to work.
Are we doing it enough?
You think? Well, no, we're not. I think that we can always do more. And I think it is hard work. You have to make an effort. You have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone to get to know people who are different to you. I'm not sure how many people are prepared to really work at that, but I think that's what it's going to take.
100%. I think whether you're of faith or non-faith, I think everybody at some point realizes it's only through people that the world changes.
What would you say to a non-faith person who's watching from France? What would you say to them? Do we have enough respect for them? Why should they respect faith if we don't respect them? What would you say to them?
What would I say is, of course, there's going to always be people, whether you're talking about matters of faith or not, that disagree with you and don't want to meet you, and there are them people. But if there's a person of non-faith, people like us of faith are more than happy to meet with them, and we hope vice versa. You know, we don't necessarily, and we shouldn't always talk about God in these conversations. You know, you can't always tell people you are Muslim, you are Christian. You sometimes just got to show them. You know, because of my faith, I believe that I should talk to people not of my faith, not of the same background as me, not of the same tribe as me, not of the whatever, and just get along. And I think that's far more powerful. That way, people don't feel like you're shoving your religion down their throat. You know, and I think that's really important.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes, and just the last question I want to ask Nick and you two. How can a faith group, especially, I'm not worried about the Muslims, I'm talking about other faith. You know, they've been, I think Muslim things, we think we've been abused so much. If you look into their papers and stuff like that, the Christianity and other groups have been you know, unbelievable things been happening with them from the non-faith groups, especially leftists. They're always attacking. So as a whole, we are in the same boat. They too. They want to survive without faith, and we want to survive with faith. So how do we how can we get together? Or where do we meet? Is it too difficult? Does it make sense? So I'm a bit out of my head.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit dangerous to talk about this situation as though it's faith against non-faith.
Yeah.
I think we have to be really careful here, because I'm not sure it's actually like that at all. Because, I mean, what do we mean even when we say non-faith groups? Actually, you're talking about an incredible diverse array of people who have 1,000,001 different beliefs about. They may not believe in God, but they might believe in something else. So
spirituality,
incredibly
love,
different opinions. And I'm not sure this is a question of faith against non-faith, or even that it's only non-faith persecuting people of faith, or people of faith persecuting. I don't think
That's not the case.
It's much more complicated than that. And I think, from my perspective, is what we do is you build relationship with absolutely anybody. If they're willing to get to know you, then build relationship with you.
We shouldn't define.
You do
it.
Right? Yeah, I think
we shouldn't make a line between. We shouldn't be. Sorry, just the last one. I think it's for you. Oh, if you could read it.
This one here. Okay. So why is UKIP and a very large part of the UK public blaming the immigrants for harming the economy and causing unemployment, when it was the politicians and their banker friends who caused this economic crisis in the first place? I mean, that's from Zaid. I think that's absolutely a good point, and it's pretty much what we said earlier. Really. It's politics. It's politics. If we're talking about the economic crisis thing, we know the causes of the crisis, and we know it wasn't the poorest people in Britain, which actually tends to be immigrants. So they're not the ones at fault for this, and they shouldn't be blamed. They're being scapegoated, and that it's wrong for them to do that. We should be willing to speak up, point out injustice where it's happening, and I'm really happy to do that. I think we try to do that as London citizens. Where there's injustice happening, people being scapegoated, we should say something.
This is the way I'd put it. I think it's a question from everybody, and I think I'm trying to cover both topics, what we are now about certain political parties and what they're saying. And I think it's a question that every single person, part of humanity, whether of faith or no faith, should ask themselves every morning, which is, what will I do? What will I do? That's the really important bit. And here, it's politics. And in organising, we have a brilliant saying, and it's, if you aren't organising, someone will organise you. Yeah. So if that person, Zaid, and they believe that immigrants are being shunned because of, and they're being blamed for everything, and actually it's bankers. Well, it's actually, you have to think about the people in power, and you have to aim to get yourself there, because that's the way the world works. That is the system. You can either complain about it and opt out, or be a really angry viewer on television, swearing and shouting at the television, or you can think, actually, what can I and we do together in order to make sure we change these things?
We've got just 2 minutes to go off the air now. Would you like to say something regarding telco and something, and then as a last comment?
So the way I'd put it is, community organising. Telco is our East London arm of the work we do, covering 5 boroughs in East London. It's where it all began. So community organising is one model of social change. There's many, many, many models, but the point here is it has been able to achieve huge amounts in the last 20, 25 years that it's been operating here, and it's growing. I joined in 2010 as an organizer, and we had about 120 members. Now we have over 330 or something. So you can imagine in 10, 20
I'm
years...
sure you must be doing something right.
We're all doing something right, and it's incredible when you're part of this work. What you realize is, you know, when you think, oh, not enough people care in this world, actually you meet people like Nick, then you meet lots of other people, and then you go, actually this world is a wonderful place.
If someone asks you, why should they get a member of Chalk, what would you say to them? They're not a member yet, but they're thinking about it. What would you say to them?
You have to think about three things. Yeah, you have to think, one is about your organization. Yeah, what your organization needs to grow. So we help organizations grow. We develop organizations through their participation in civil society. The other one is, what do you want for yourself? So what are your interests? There are some interests of ours that we have that we can't fill by ourselves, and some, whether it's our own personal development or whether it's how we achieve things in the community. And the other one is like, how do you want the world to be? And this is what we do. In small steps, we go from the world as it is to the world as it should be. And there's a way we train people, and I think that's a lot of value for membership. And you can ask Nick, because he's been here for years.
Well, we've been part of London Citizens for about 7 years. For us, it's about changing the world, starting with our community, where we are. We've seen people's lives change with things like the living wage. We've seen people who were getting minimum wage managed to see them win a living wage for their organisation, you know, for their work, and it's changed their lives. So I've seen street lights fixed because we gathered together and said we need to sort that out. Housing issues, all sorts of things that concern every single one of us, all of us affected by these things. And being part of a big organisation where loads of people come together in diversity means we can be so much more powerful than I could ever achieve on my own, and that's why we're part of it and we love it.
And things can start really, really small. Like we were talking about this campaign, the living wage, it began in conversations in East London, people talking about having to hold 3-4 jobs together just to make ends meet because they didn't get paid enough. And now this same campaign has won over £250 million in the country. Before we were trying to convince politicians, now they're convincing everybody else about it. And I think that's incredible to think just over 10 years the impact a group of organised people can make on the country. I think that's real social political change.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time. I'm really proud actually, and it was really amazing to come up with the things we talked about. A lot of people enjoyed, especially people from France. I can't say anything in France, but I would have said good night at least.
Bonne nuit.
Bonne nuit. Fantastic. It's a time of friendship. It's very important for us, and we want to see a nice and beautiful world. So we need to work together, and you guys proven it. And let's see if we can do much more. Thank you for your time, brothers and sisters, and we'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.